Having an amazing time eating in Paris isn't a matter of luck. Everything that I talk about in this video is designed specifically for those parents that are kind of worried about taking your kids to Paris. I'm going to talk about the exact strategies, in fact, the 7 rules that will help you eat well and really enjoy your time in this magnificent city. When you're traveling with your family, eating out for every meal, it's draining. You get tired, the kids get tired, and it's no longer fun. My wife and I used to plan these grand European vacations before we had kids, where we'd go out to dinner starting at 9:30 p.m. and we'd eat just like the locals would. But if we considered doing that today, we'd be crazy. We need to make sure we're finished eating by 6:30 p.m. or our son's gonna be so hungry, it's gonna ruin the rest of our day. Rule number 1, eat breakfast at home, not a cafe. A new strategy that my family has just been absolutely loving as we visit Paris is, instead of rushing out to that cafe first thing in the morning with a tired, groggy family, we decide to send out either one person or else a couple to run out and stop into a Boulangerie to pick up pastries, a grocery store to pick up some yogurts, and then right around the block to a fresh fruit stand that you'll find in many locations throughout Paris. Bring them back to your Airbnb where the whole family can sit down together and enjoy a delicious French breakfast. I feel like for me, those breakfasts in the Airbnb before we get started is really what a family vacation to Europe is all about. It's something you're going to remember afterwards and just cherish and be so happy that you're there with the grandparents, your kids, and yourself, taking all this time and effort to go to Europe. It's marvelous. Rule number 2 is making lunch your big meal of the day. One reason we love making lunch our big meal of the day is because we can spend the morning eating at our Airbnb with that breakfast we've picked up from the Boulangerie, and then we can plan to head out fresh and walk to a local playground. And these local playgrounds are often located in pedestrian-only squares that have cafes and restaurants that line these parks. So you can go, you can play at the park with your kids, and then afterwards, you're ready for a delicious French lunch. Some of the nicer restaurants that might be more thought of as a romantic dinner option, they actually serve the meal of the day over lunchtime at a fraction of the price with still the same high quality ingredients and wonderful meal. So give that a try with your family. After you've been in Paris for a few days, you might find that even eating lunch out every day gets kind of repetitive and tiring. So don't forget that you can stop into a Boulangerie and actually pick up very high quality pre-made sandwiches on delicious baguettes that are often going to be much cheaper than the price you'd pay at a restaurant. Rule number 3 might be a little controversial, but I would actually encourage you to forget about the romantic night out in Paris. If your kids are anything like mine, they typically like to eat pretty early. And guess what? In Paris, many of the restaurants don't open until after 7 or 7:30 at night. So we've found that trying to take our son out to dinner in Paris isn't a very good idea. He's often far too hungry and isn't going to be able to sit still through that late dinner. I may have already mentioned this before, but when you're on a long 2-week trip to Europe, you're going to get tired of eating out for every meal, and your kids will especially get tired of that. So we found in Paris that one thing that's absolutely fabulous is a lot of restaurants offer pickup food. So for instance, when we were staying near the Eiffel Tower, there's a pedestrian-only street called Rue Claire, and we were able to walk down that street, and restaurants actually offered food that you could take. You could order at their window outside the restaurant, and you could get food to go that you could take back to your Airbnb, warm that up at home, and eat it right there at your apartment. It was a great way to not have to eat out for every single meal. We also found that you didn't have to eat at French food only restaurants. There's a lot of ethnic restaurants like Thai food, Chinese, and even pizza that we decided to order for dinner. We got that for pickup and took it right back to our place The other big advantage you might be able to tap into if you're traveling with your kids and their grandparents is actually planning to have the grandparents babysit while you head out for a date night. My wife and I actually had this plan in mind when we were last in Paris. We had purchased Eiffel Tower tickets for sunset, and we planned to go out for a romantic dinner afterwards. Unfortunately, when that day came around, our son was having kind of a difficult day, and he really didn't want us to leave him with the grandparents. So we talked to my wife's parents and decided to give them the Eiffel Tower tickets, which before they tripped, they'd actually told us they didn't really want to go visit the Eiffel Tower. But we gave them the tickets because we'd already purchased them, and they actually headed out on a date night of their own. They went up to the second floor of the Eiffel Tower. They had champagne, and then they had a wonderful dinner afterwards. And when they got back, they were so happy and pleased that they were able to experience the Eiffel Tower and get out on a date night and really visit, the beauty and just fully take in what the city of Paris has to offer. And who knows, maybe this year when I'm back in Paris with my family, my wife and I will actually be able to head out on a romantic date night on our own. We'll have to see. You never know when you're planning a trip to Europe. Rule number 4, the vibe check and the 5 red flags to watch out for to avoid those tourist trap restaurants. The first tourist trap to watch out for is if there's somebody out on the street ushering you into that restaurant, keep walking. That's good restaurants in Paris don't need someone out front advertising to come on in. Another thing to watch out for is if there's a giant menu right out in front of that business, that restaurant, that has high quality, glossy photos of their food, keep walking. That's not a place you want to eat at. Another sign that you might want to keep walking past this restaurant is if you look at their menu out front of the restaurant and it's written in all English, that's a pretty good sign that that's a restaurant catering to tourists, not locals. If you and your family walk into a restaurant and the server greets you with "Hello, come sit here," instead of "Bonjour," then you've clearly found a tourist trap. If you can see the Eiffel Tower or other major landmarks from your restaurant, you're likely paying a premium to have a view of that monument. Instead, I'd recommend that you walk 2 or 3 blocks away from the monument and find a truly good French restaurant to eat at. Otherwise, you're just paying extra for mediocre food. Up next, I wanted to share a little travel kind of horror story for you all that my wife and I learned firsthand. And this really goes over the importance of doing a vibe check before you actually settle in and pick your restaurant. So specifically, don't be afraid to pop your head into a restaurant and make sure it looks like a good place to eat before you sit down. Had my wife and I followed this advice, this story I'm going to get into wouldn't have happened to us. So we were visiting Pisa in Italy. We had just had a wonderful day sightseeing and we were ready for dinner. We were walking along the road there and looking at various restaurants. We'd ruled a few out and we came to this beautiful pedestrian-only square and found this restaurant with a great outdoor patio, and we said, let's just do it. We'll eat here. We sat down and our meal got underway. We ordered food and I actually had to get up and go use the bathroom, and I walked over and put my head into the restaurant for the first time and quickly realized there was no indoor seating. Didn't even look like there was a kitchen. I heard, I think, a ding on a microwave as our lasagna was coming out of the microwave. It sort of appeared like they were just heating up frozen lasagna at this restaurant. Well, the meal was mediocre, to say the least. The ambiance was great, but had we actually taken the time to pop our head in and get a vibe check on that restaurant before we sat down, we could have had such a better meal that night. So don't make that same mistake when you're visiting these wonderful European cities. Rule number 5 is actually being willing to break your rules. So I just spent time telling you all these things to avoid, things to watch out for when you're selecting a restaurant in Paris. But sometimes there's actually going to be exceptions to that rule where you actually want to go to the tourist trap and it's going to be part of your Parisian experience. I've got a story I want to share that I'll get into next. One of the last times that my wife, my son, and my wife's parents and I visited Paris, we spent one of our days deciding to go and visit the Musée des Orangeries, which is right outside the Tuileries Gardens. So we walked from our Airbnb over to the museum, and we knew this museum would be a good place to take our young son because it's a relatively small museum that is easy to go and see Monet's water lilies. Fantastic museum if you're planning your first trip to Paris. And so we went there with our son. We enjoyed the museum. It was actually my son's first time to a museum, and we got done much faster than the grandparents. And we had picked this museum because we knew we could leave the museum once we were full and done, and my son specifically was done. And we took him from there to the Tuileries Gardens, which has playgrounds, it has a historic carousel, and all these things that are great for a young kid in Paris. We went and did that while my wife's parents enjoyed their time. They got to spend all the time they wanted visiting this museum. And so while we were visiting the Tuileries Gardens, after everybody was done with the museum and playground, we actually broke all the rules, and we went to one of the outdoor cafes within the Tuileries Gardens. This is a known tourist trap. We knew the food wasn't going to be all that great. We knew the service wouldn't be all that great, but we ate there anyways because we were right in the heart of Paris, and we could eat outside, enjoy the beautiful trees, enjoy the scenery, and really take in the city. And so that was a time where we broke all the rules, we went to the tourist trap, but to be honest, it was part of visiting Paris, and we're so happy we decided to do that. And I think it's something you may want to try on your next trip to Paris. Rule number 6 is don't forget to slow down and stop for those delicious treats. Stop for the ice cream, stop for the pastries, and stop for the macaroons. It's going to really enhance your visit. You're going to get to stop into another local cafe or restaurant and just enjoy what Paris has to offer to you. One treat that you must try when you're in Paris is a chouquette. These are small puff pastries that are typically sold at boulangeries, and they're sold in these little paper bags that are so easy to transport. Rule number 7 is my rapid fire, good to know things for eating in Paris. The water in Paris and throughout France is safe to drink. You don't have to worry about buying bottled water for every meal. And at restaurants, if you want to have tap water, free water, instead of having to pay for a bottle of water, all you have to ask for is un carafe d'eau, and they'll bring you out a jug of tap water, and that should be free with your meal. When you first arrive at a restaurant, if you want to eat outdoors, you can often just seat yourself at any table that's available, and that's perfectly acceptable. If you want to eat indoors, you'll want to wait for a server to come up and meet you, and they'll seat you at a specific table. One thing you may not know is that at many French restaurants, the bathroom is either located downstairs in the basement or else up one level. So keep that in mind if you're looking for the restroom. Getting the check after you're done with your meal can be a bit confusing for some. Specifically, the server's not going to bring the check to your table. You actually need to ask for it when you're done with your meal. In Paris, it's very much a culture of sitting and enjoying your time, and that server is not going to come around and try to push you out of the restaurant. Service at a restaurant in France is naturally slow. It's really built into the culture. It'd actually be considered rude if a server continuously came back to your table to check on you. You're often going to need to flag them down if you need something, and that's exactly how the French culture works. Their meals are often designed to be a leisurely thing that can take an hour or two, and it's something you just need to expect when you visit Paris. Tipping after your meal is not expected in Paris or throughout the rest of France. Servers are paid a living wage, and they don't expect you to tip. Now, if you had really good service, you could leave €1 or 2 on the table, but most French people don't tip, and the server certainly doesn't expect you to. Thanks so much for tuning in today. My name's Ryan, and I'm a dad who absolutely loves to travel to Europe with my family. If you found today's video to be really helpful for you, I would love it if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you found today's video to be useful, you may want to check out this video right over here, where I go over a full breakdown of where to stay with your family in Paris and why I think that Paris is perhaps the perfect city to visit in Europe with your family. So thanks again, and don't forget to love everybody and be kind. We'll catch you next time.